The year was 2032, and the small town of Riverside, Montana, sat peacefully beside the Yellowstone River. Surrounded by mountains and forests, it was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody. People left their doors unlocked, children played outside until sunset, and neighbors helped each other without being asked. Among the town's residents was 34-year-old Jack Walker, a former U.S. Army combat engineer. After serving 2 tours overseas, Jack had returned home seeking a quiet life. He worked as a mechanic, fixed tractors for local farmers, and spent weekends fishing with his 12-year-old daughter, Emma. To most people, Jack was an ordinary man. But extraordinary moments often find ordinary people. One August morning, weather forecasts began warning of severe storms moving across the Rocky Mountains. Residents paid little attention. Storms were common in Montana. By evening, however, the rain had become relentless. Water poured from the sky in sheets. Rivers swelled beyond their banks. Emergency alerts buzzed across cell phones. Flash flood warning. The Yellowstone River rose faster than anyone had ever seen. By midnight, entire roads had disappeared beneath rushing water. The town's emergency services worked tirelessly, evacuating residents from low-lying areas. Jack volunteered immediately, driving his pickup through flooded streets to help move families to higher ground. The storm worsened. At 2 a.m., the mayor received devastating news. The old Harrison Bridge, the only road connecting Riverside to the neighboring communities, was in danger of collapse. More than 200 people remained trapped on the far side of the river. If the bridge failed before they crossed, they would be stranded in the path of rising floodwaters. Emergency crews rushed to the scene. Jack arrived minutes later. The sight was terrifying. The river had transformed into a roaring monster. Massive tree trunks crashed against the bridge supports. Water surged just feet below the roadway. Engineers estimated the bridge had less than 2 hours before failure. Panic spread among the trapped residents. Children cried. Parents shouted. Emergency workers struggled to organize evacuations. Then disaster struck. A deafening crack echoed through the night. One section of the bridge shifted several inches. People screamed. "The bridge is breaking," someone yelled. Authorities immediately halted vehicle traffic. Crossing by car was now too dangerous. The only option was to move people on foot. But the bridge continued to deteriorate. Jack studied the structure carefully. His military training kicked in. He realized something. One of the support cables had snapped loose and was whipping violently in the wind. If it severed the remaining stabilizing lines, the bridge could collapse immediately. Someone needed to secure it. The problem was obvious. Doing so meant climbing onto the damaged section suspended above raging floodwaters. The chance of survival was slim. No one volunteered. No one blamed them. The task seemed impossible. Jack looked at the frightened families gathered behind the barricades. He thought about Emma. He thought about what would happen if the bridge collapsed. Then he stepped forward. "I'll do it." Several firefighters stared at him. "Jack, that's suicide." "Maybe," he replied. "But if nobody goes, those people don't get home." The fire chief shook his head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Without waiting for permission, Jack secured a safety harness and grabbed a toolkit. The rain hammered against his face as he climbed onto the damaged framework. Every step caused the bridge to groan. Below him, floodwaters churned like a giant whirlpool. Thousands of tons of water rushed beneath his boots. One mistake would mean death. The crowd watched in silence. Jack reached the damaged cable. The steel line whipped through the air with tremendous force. Twice it nearly struck him. He ducked and pressed himself against the structure. The bridge shook violently. Another crack echoed across the river. People gasped. Time was running out. Working quickly, Jack attached a temporary anchor system. His hands bled as steel wires sliced through his gloves. Rain blinded him. Wind threatened to throw him into the river. Yet he continued. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of exhausting work, he secured the cable. The violent shaking immediately lessened. Cheers erupted from both sides of the river. But the danger wasn't over. The bridge remained unstable. Emergency officials began evacuating people on foot. One group at a time crossed the narrow passage. Children first. Then elderly residents. Then families. For nearly an hour, the evacuation continued. Everything seemed to be working. Then another emergency emerged. A school bus carrying 15 children had become stranded several miles away. Floodwaters had trapped the vehicle. The road behind it had vanished. The road ahead was underwater. The driver radioed desperately for help. Water was already entering the bus. Rescue teams were stretched beyond capacity. Many roads were impassable. Helicopters couldn't fly because of the storm. Jack had barely finished helping at the bridge when he heard the report. Without hesitation, he volunteered again. A rescue boat was launched into the raging waters. Jack and 2 firefighters fought through debris-filled currents. The journey was brutal. Several times their boat nearly overturned. Tree branches smashed against the hull. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Yet they pushed forward. After 40 minutes, they found the bus. The sight chilled them. Water surrounded the vehicle. The children were trapped inside. The bus had begun to tilt. If it rolled, everyone aboard could drown. Jack tied a rope around his waist. The firefighters protested. Again. You're not going out there alone. If the current takes all of us, nobody gets rescued, Jack replied. Before they could argue further, he jumped. The freezing water hit him like a hammer. The current immediately tried to drag him away. He fought every inch. Swimming felt like battling a living creature. Finally, he reached the bus. The terrified children pressed against the windows. It's okay, Jack shouted. We're getting you out. One by one, he helped them into flotation devices and guided them along the rope system back to the rescue boat. The operation took over an hour. His muscles screamed with exhaustion. His body trembled from cold. Yet he refused to stop. 14 children reached safety. Then someone counted again. Only 14. One child remained missing. A young boy named Noah. Panic erupted inside the bus. Jack searched desperately. Finally, he heard a faint cry. The boy was trapped beneath a collapsed seat. Water continued rising. The bus shifted dangerously. At any moment it could roll into the river. Jack crawled inside. The water reached his chest. Metal groaned around him. He pulled at the twisted frame. Nothing moved. Noah cried harder. Jack planted his feet and pushed with every ounce of strength he had left. The metal finally bent. He freed the boy. At that exact moment, the bus lurched violently. The structure began tipping. Jack grabbed Noah and dove through a side window. Seconds later, the bus disappeared beneath the floodwaters. The crowd on shore erupted in cheers as Jack emerged carrying the child. Noah was safe. Every child survived. By sunrise, the storm finally weakened. The floodwaters slowly began receding. Riverside had suffered heavy damage, but hundreds of lives had been saved. News of the rescue spread quickly. Television stations arrived. Reporters interviewed residents. Again and again, people told the same story. A man who refused to quit. A man who chose courage when fear would have been easier. Weeks later, a ceremony was held in the town square. Citizens packed every street. Children carried handmade signs. Firefighters stood in uniform. The governor presented Jack with a state medal for extraordinary heroism. When asked how he felt, Jack simply smiled. "I wasn't trying to be a hero," he said. "I just saw people who needed help." The crowd applauded. But the people of Riverside understood something important. Bravery is not the absence of fear. Jack had been afraid. Anyone would have been. The difference was that he acted anyway. Years later, children still learned about the flood of 2032. They learned about the bridge. They learned about the rescue. And they learned that true courage is not measured by medals, strength, or fame. It is measured by the willingness to risk everything for others. Whenever people crossed the new bridge built over the Yellowstone River, they saw a bronze plaque mounted near its entrance. It bore a simple inscription. Dedicated to Jack Walker, whose courage reminded us that one brave person can change the fate of many. And every person who read those words remembered the night an ordinary American became a symbol of extraordinary bravery.